What's up, everybody? Kchris Griffin here, along with Chris Mason, Jason Watkins, Jason with the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with the coach. Students 360, Mr. Students 360 himself, Chris Mason, Horns Down Podcast, Horns Down always. Guys, we're back with I think this is going to be a really good episode. I think we got some things that we can continue on for the next couple of weeks as well, while we're kind of in quote unquote kind of the dead weeks, right? Leading up to the, honestly, it's the first countdown to what, obviously we got the spring game and all the rest of that stuff. But when I say countdown to the official 100 days until college football is back. And then we have that countdown, right? So that being said, fellas, how you guys doing?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, that being said, you know what? I'm going to pass the mic to Jason. Jason, what are we talking about first tonight?
Well, we can talk about a few things, but I think just we're hearing a lot and seeing a lot of things out of spring camp that it's a lot more competitive around there than what we were seeing at this time last year, where it was pretty much dominated by one side of the football, the defense. You're seeing, we saw some one-on-ones, some of it's being one, the ones that I really noticed and paid the most attention to was probably the linemen and, offensive linemen holding their own against pretty damn good defensive linemen and vice versa. So it's, I think it's one of the things, it's a good thing to see, right? You have to have competitive competition on both sides. I think, iron sharpens iron. We talk about that a lot, but when you've got coming off of a season where you've had a tough time getting anything going offensively, and one of the biggest problems was definitely on that line, seeing them be able to hold up against some guys that are All-American types in the interior and certainly on the exterior as well on the edges is cool. Then I really like the fact that, as good as I think the secondary is, and I think it's, the corners are probably a little bit unproven, but as good as I think the secondary is and the linebackers as well, you're seeing that kind of going back to seeing really good talent at the receiver position showing his head, and the quarterback is finding them. It's good to see, man. It really is. It is, you also heard Mateer talking about this isn't a one-way street. It's definitely, you got to make the right play, and you have to, the throw better be good or else it's going the other way. So that's, to me, that was definitely exciting to hear as well. Cause you want to have a balance, right? There has to be a balance between, domination on one side or the other. When Lincoln was here, it was always the offense is always way ahead. Since Brent has been in, the head coach, it's kind of been the opposite of that, or at least it was in the last year or two. So I'm excited about that. I don't know about you, Chris Mason, but it to me, I think it's to see that is important.
Well, the one item I take away is that this was, they felt confident enough about how the offensive line was going to perform to allow all of the media to film one-on-ones where you had David Stone going against EPL. Yeah. You had all these guys, because if they didn't feel confident in how the offensive line was performing this spring, there's no way you would have let them. They wouldn't have. We didn't get this film last year. I don't recall it. And if it had been, it probably would have been a disaster.
You got a couple in like just individual drills but it was.
But overall,
not the same for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Even the toughest, maybe, and I can't say I've diagnosed every, frame of them, but just the fact that you were letting the offensive line, like, guys, we're letting every freaking TV camera in Oklahoma record this. It'll be all over the internet because this is the best content we've given all of the internet sites and all of the local media. And guess what? And if you guys look like ass, it's going to be a complete meltdown about the offensive line. But Bill and Kevin Wilson, and if you heard any of the interviews from some of the offensive line guys, you can tell, and some of the comments were moving around, and we've talked about it on this podcast before, and I talked to a source as well. Kevin Wilson is basically, Bill trusts him enough that Kevin Wilson is co-coaching the offensive line. That for the longest time, we've always wondered why we couldn't get Bill more help, right? His room's huge. He's got so many guys. Everybody else is really split up, right? Essentially. I mean, Bill has 12, 15 guys, and everybody else has, at max, maybe about 8. Secondary split up. D-line is split up. But Bill, so now you've got Kevin Wilson helping him, and Bill respects Kevin Wilson so much because why wouldn't you? I mean, he's the architect of the best offense, arguably, in OU history. I mean, a great offseason podcast would be 08 versus 2017. Which one was better, right? That's a classic kind of conversation, right? So Kevin Wilson, I just feel like the fact that they just put the O-line out there and said, we're confident enough that they're going to put on a good showing against the elite D-line, against our Mason Thomas, PJ, David Stone, Halton. It looks like Marvin Jones Jr. was held out. So Danny Okoye. And again, in these drills, generally tend to go the defensive line's way, right? Because offensive line it's more of a group kind of activity, right? It's generally weighted a little more to the D line. At least that's the way it's always been described to me. I just thought the fact that they were that they were confident enough to let the offensive line be filmed in this scenario shows how much more confident they are in what the O-line's doing this spring.
No doubt. Yeah, I think you definitely. I've thought that was a pretty good development as well. But I would kind of like to see Kevin working with the tight ends a bit.
Well, he is too. He is working with the tight ends as well. So
it's one of those things where with him, his offense was truly. We've said this a lot on this podcast. Maybe talking a little bit about Levy, maybe about Lincoln. I guess you can say, you're more so air raid, veer and shoot, kind of their variations, their spin off of it. But you can truly say that the term that best describe his offenses are just multiple. Any type of look, whatever matchup, whatever type of scheme that he thinks is going to work that game. He's going to run that. Whether it's more focus on the run, maybe it's a lot more bootleg, maybe it's just, hey, we're going to spread them out, do these things. It was a lot of different things, and you've seen that over there. Hate to see that he couldn't really get too much consistency there at Tulsa. Not going to say it was a lot of issues there, shuffle of quarterbacks, all types of stuff. We know the drill down there, but glad to have him on the staff. But kind of just focusing in on those one-on-ones, man, I thought it was really good stuff. Obviously, you're happy that the offensive line looked like they were holding their own. A couple of them looked like they were doing their thing. A couple of guys that stood out, Taylor, right, Sexton, guys like that. I mean, they're pancaking guys, but then you look at Fasusi as well, right? And you're looking at EPL guys. You feel a lot better. But like I said, this spring ball going into summer, we're starting to see guys are out there taking live reps like this, and that's what you want to see, especially from some of your veterans. I know where we're all excited about the possibility of what Ozada and Howland could be. But if you could get the best out of guys like Taylor and Sexton, upper class guys that have been there, guys that know some, and guys
or Weiwu as well. Exactly. If Weiwu
as well, if you could get consistent play out of that, especially and get this type of play going against this D line that I think from top to bottom, I think a lot of people are really excited about, just not only because of the talent and the depth, but because of the experience now. These guys, because a lot of these guys are in their second or third year in this system now or more, right? So you're really excited about that. So it's just stuff that has to continue to carry over. But I mean, you're looking at, you look at the Sextons, you look at the Taylors, but Fasusi, Foje, all these guys out there, and they look the part, meaning that whatever Sexton and all them were doing, you can have rave reviews about that. Fasusi and all them were doing the same. So, I mean, those were great reps. Those were great reps.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. Derek Simmons had to put basically a headlock on Taylor Wine from getting to the quarterback. So Taylor Wine was blowing off he looked explosive. I'm like, that's a big dude.
He's a big dude, and he is explosive, man.
He's got some explosive to him. Yeah.
Yeah.
The PJ Fasusi battle was kind of like elite on elite. It's like, okay, that's, that looked like, those guys look like what they're supposed to look like, right? It was interesting when you heard Simmons talking about going there. Simmons had a great point. He was talking about how Foji and Fasusi are just elite athletes playing O-line.
Oh,
like he said, he's like, I'm, I think he's gonna say, I'm like a lunch pail kind of guy. I'm gonna hit you, smack you around. And I'm gonna do everything I can do to lie, cheat, steal to stop you from getting to the quarterback. And then he's like, but Foji and Fasusi are like, Greek gods out here. If they figure out all the tricks and techniques to go with their stupid physical skills, they're going to be
6'6" and 300 plus pounds and move quickly. Lateral movement is really good. They've got this ridiculous reach as far as arm length and all that wing spread or whatever. But bro, I agree with you. I think that it's important that you have these kind of things happening, to where, and you keep hearing that. I just keep hearing respect out of the other side, one side versus the other. They're battling out there, and they're excited when they get, a win, and that competitive part of it. But then they're like, but it doesn't. We're excited about it because it doesn't come every time. It's you got to have a great rep. You can't afford to have a bad day, or you're going to get made to look stupid. And I think that it's also, you're starting to hear some guys are getting healthier again, which is good. It feels like I know that Marcus Dent was talking about they're expecting that Isaiah Autry will be back in competing again on the line these last few days, I guess, of spring, and so coming up. So that's important, and so I think that when you start thinking about it, we didn't have this kind of optimism going into the spring or to the fall or summer and fall last year, because it was like, man, we got to get some guys healthy.
So did you see the one-on-ones, O-line, D-line brought me back to when Brent was on with Josh Pate, it was a lot of Brent talking the Brent stuff that we've heard before.
Yeah.
But at the very end, Brent said, my number one sort of goal or wish is that the two sides of the football can complement each other, and that one side's not having to overcompensate for the failures of the other side.
Yeah.
So when I saw that one-on-one, and I'm hearing Simmons talk about the defensive line, like, man, there's some mutants over there, and you're hearing Mateer say that, and the D-line guys are starting to say, yeah, those wide receivers are really, Mateer is really, if we're not doing what we want to do, Mateer's cooking us in practice. When you hear that stuff and you hear that's Brent's number one kind of wish, it's if we could field a team that was top 30 on both sides of the ball, right? As opposed to top 5 offense, top 76 defense, or what happened, or worse. But I'm trying to
vice versa. I mean, if it was the defense is in the top 5 or whatever, but the offense is in the hundreds.
I'm trying to view last year as much as an aberration as possible.
Of course,
but
that's what everybody thinks about. That's what everybody. They're
kind of stuck on that. But I'm more stuck on like the Lincoln years, where it's like 17 and 18. If we had a top 30 defense, it's back-to-back titles, and then God knows where it would have gone just because of the recruiting off that. But that's the point. When I saw the one-on-ones going on, it's like, they're not winning every rep, and then maybe their technique is not great, but those guys are battling. We've got good athletes.
Yeah.
We've got guys. When you see Sexton battling R. Mason Thomas, and he's battling him to the pretty well. Our Mason
alpha dogs right there.
Our Mason worked the Stanford guy a little bit, but that's to be expected, right? I mean, he's just come in. He's a new guy, but that was the thing that it really struck me was, Brent emphasizing, I want the teams to both sides of the ball to complement each other, and then you hear, so far, we're hearing great things about Coach Dreiling and Coach Goodwin from various sources. I know, Jason, you've got guys who you're talking to some family members of guys that are directly working with those guys.
Yeah.
And then we're hearing other stuff from them as well. That's some of the players. Sam O was talking about him. Was talking about, Sam O's making a push at middle linebacker.
Good, man. Everything I've heard about him is that he's killing it this spring. He's done a lot.
And Kobe's playing well too. So it's like they're pushing each other. It's just, it looks like the hires that we didn't really give a lot of attention to because of the whole Knowles nonsense were much better than we thought. And then the Kevin Wilson thing on the offensive side of the ball. If Bill has somebody co-coaching the offensive line with him and making that line better, that's a massive win. I mean, to have, if you could, I've just heard that Wilson's, pretty energized and pretty chilled about his new gig. Now that he's removed from all the head ball coaching stuff that wasn't working for him, right? The NIL stuff and all the other stuff. He's old school. He's sick of that crap. If he can just coach O-line, he'll be happy. He's just happy because he's like, Bill's just having me coach O-line. That's right. And he's working with the tight ends too. So you take all the stuff away that I think Bill was probably bad at, which is all the HR head football coach shit, because he doesn't have time for it, right? But you just let him focus on the practice field. That's a big addition there. And I think it's showing, this spring. And one last point, because I'm talking too long, is if you're Howland and Ozada, you're like, I need to be rehabbing my ass off because I need to get back on the field because there are guys. It's not because last year, if you were Howland and Ozada, you could have sat back and like, hey, no problem. I'll show up in August and there's no one in front of me. Now you're like, well, I got these older guys and now I got these hotshot freshmen. So, I need to get, hey, rehab guys, get my ass back on the field.
No, I hear you on that. I definitely understand. And speaking of that, let's go back to this question right here. Logan, he asked, who has a better chance if having the most playing time, Foje or Fasusi? So I'll let the panel answer that.
So the question is, if they don't get a backup center, like the Stanford guy who's visiting Makula or whatever, and they have to play Nwewu, and they have to focus on Nwewu being a backup center, and you take him away from the guard mix, leaving an opening at guard, then I think Foje has a better chance of hitting the field.
If there is an opening at guard?
If there is an opening, because you've got Ozetta and EPL battling, because you've had to rob Peter to pay Paul. I just think Simmons is locked in at right tackle, which means Fasucci is going to end up fighting Sexton, Howland for playing time. So I think don't
you feel like they're shaping this up to be at least two guys rotation anyway, to where
Yeah, you could be right. I think Foje.
It feels like that's where they've been heading. Is they're expecting to kind of have a rotation to try to keep some of these guys fresh, and depending on whatever game plan they're running with at the moment.
Yeah, I think Foje. I put this on my Patreon site. Plug for my Patreon site. I've had more than one person tell me that Foje's Jaden Jackson and Fasusi's David Stone. Mm-hmm. And don't be surprised, just like last year, Jackson played more than Stone. That ends up being that mix. Foje at guard he could easily be at right tackle. He's that talented, and at guard, his athletic ability just shines that much more. Like he's, it's like the Iowa guy who went to the Bucks, Tristan Wirfs. Yeah. Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah, Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah, he was a guard at Iowa because they had an okay tackle and their guards were terrible. And then he's been an all-pro right tackle in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the Foje. When I said, why is he playing guard? And they said, well, you remember Tristan Wirfs playing guard at Iowa because their tackles were okay, but their guards were terrible, and they had two competent tackles, but their guard play was bad, so they moved Wirfs inside because he could play both. Well, that's Foje, right? He can be a guard, he can be a tackle. So I just think the possibility exists that if Nwewu was forced to be the center then all of a sudden, you could see Foji leaping Ozeta or maybe EPL for starting time at guard.
Let me jump in here real quick. Everybody like on every channel, subscribe, do all those different things to the channel. Quick plug for everybody in here. On the piggybacking off of that, Chris Mason, you and I definitely had plenty of conversations on and off screen about how Foje could end up being the best O-line recruit out of this class just because of how versatile his skill set was. And then on top of that, one more name that we're forgetting, probably won't necessarily, because he hasn't been hyped up that much and he's been injured. But people, please, and I think my uncle in here, he would be mad if I didn't mention his guy. Afalava is a kid. I think that in the future you will be talking a lot about. I think that kid, he was a 3-star kid we picked that up out of Utah. That I think a lot of people are really
remember they had to clean up his knee, so yeah, he may become a factor in August. Like all of a sudden, now that his knee's cleaned up and he's passed his rehab in August, he may be a guy that they're like, okay, now that he's back in the mix, because he was doing all that last year apparently on a bum knee, just burying folks while his knee was injured in high school. So, I think we'll see. But if you had to. It's tough. It's like, because you could just see Fasusi again, like taking over like the left tackle position and just never giving it up. Gets into a game and just, it's like, and just Wally, I'm going to use I'm not sure what the modern Wally Pip reference is, because that's a really old reference in terms of baseball.
That's an old reference.
What's the current? It's like the I guess Tom Brady for Drew Bledsoe, right? Tom let Drew got hurt, let Tom Brady into the game, and we never lost his spot. So I just think, if you let Michael Fasusi start, good luck getting your job back.
Yeah, and again, I feel like there's a lot of jockeying for position, right? Because if you're not in one of those probably top couple of positions on the line, then it could spell you not getting a whole lot of time looking, unless there's injuries or that kind of stuff. But that's the thing that you want to see is competition in that room too for that playing time, competitive depth. We talk about it all the time.
Oh yeah, we want to have 3 deep at O-line, right? You want to be
great, absolutely.
Because after what happened last year, you'd love that. Let's just say Autry Dent's 3rd team right tackle, and he has to play this year. You'll be like, well, that's great, because he now is actually so much more.
Yeah, and right before his injury stuff, he was at 2nd team on the left side. So that's another guy that I don't think a lot of people on any of the shows, dang Norman, are talking about. But I think that you could see him if he's healthy and that knee's coming up better. Hey, get down. Golly. If he's healthy, you're going to see him competing, because he's another guy that's a monster out there, 6'7", 320 pounds now. And you're just seeing him, and it seems like he's starting to feel better from what I hear. So I'm excited for that too. But I'm excited for all of them. I think Darius Afalava, that's a great thought there, because that dude is a flat out just mauler. You that was saying that one time he would block his grandmother.
That's the phrase I was using. He'd block his grandmother over the goal line for a touchdown. He'd shove somebody in a locker to steal their lunch money. The coach said, "Hey, we need to score a touchdown this play. To do that, you need to shove that kid in a locker." Done, coach.
I remember my uncle was talking. He was like, "Hey," he was like, the Foje kid could be better than Fasusi, because he tries to watch as much film as he possibly can when he does have time, but." Yeah. He watched the Afalava kid and he said, nephew, that kid right there is SEC All-American, could be just All-American. He's like, that's how good that kid is. He's like, that kid could potentially be a difference maker on the inside for us, because he always hears me talk about how I want maulers. I just don't want hog mollies up there in the interior. I want maulers. So no, I'm excited. I think those reps gave everybody a lot to be excited about as far as just the O line. I think the D line, you're kind of just gleaning as much as you possibly can from some of the videos that have been released, like even just the little, cool like hot mic videos and stuff like that. But you're seeing a compilation of things and a combination of things. Honestly, Mateer looks good out there. It looks like he's really in charge of that offense. And I think one thing we talk, a lot of people are comparing and contrasting where we were at last year opposed to where we're at this year. Obviously, we have a quarterback that knows the system with his OC, all the rest of those different things. But I think the one thing that I like to focus on is the fact that I know, just like he did last year, BV is throwing a lot at Mateer, right? Just like he did Jackson last year, just like they did Hawkins, in spurts, right? But this year with him, he's able to counter that. He has something against that. I think I saw a quote today, maybe you guys saw it as well, what an anonymous coach said, hey, if that guy is on, if that guy is in rhythm, is consistent, this and that, he's going to be hard to stop, right? So it's just one of those things where we literally could be looking at the best quarterback in college football this year, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if that's going to materialize, if that's going to happen for sure. Did you
see the ESPN top 25 quarterback list?
No, I haven't seen that.
One of the guys he had, Mateer was 3 or 4, and he had like Arch at like 11. But the list was just there's names like Carson Beck at 7. Drew Allard at 2, and it was just like, just some guys who have been incredibly average or just plain bad at times. And you're just like,
I think that they're putting an awful lot of weight on him playing in mostly the Mountain West Conference. I think they're putting an awful lot of weight. Even if you were to take away 15 touchdowns, that's still 30 damn touchdowns if you go last year to this year.
I was watching on YouTube a video from On3. It was they were talking about the top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC. I'll see if I can dig up the link.
Let me guess. Number 1, Arch Manning.
No, it was the 2 guys actually had different opinions, but the one guy had Mateer at number 2, and the other guy was kind of spinning this whole, well, he's never played in the SEC. The SEC is, it's everyone's like everyone's got bad defenses like the '86 Bears in the SEC, according to this guy apparently. But but the guy who ranked him in the top 5, he's like, look, you could talk all about competition, but the guy dominated. When you play low,
there's a bunch of new quarterbacks in the SEC too.
Yeah, he's like, you could talk about like his schedule and the schedule he played, but he dominated. He's like, I watched every film of this guy, and the guy dominated. He made play after play after play. And he said, you could criticize his level of competition all you want, but he crushed it. It's not like he played a low level of competition and was struggling. He just crushed it. So he's like, you need to like roll back this SEC, he didn't play in the SEC kind of stuff because, Mateer just did it. And again, a source I talked to said that Mateer they just said he looks freaking awesome so far. They're like, I was already somewhat buying the hype before, but he's like, I'm all in. He said over this last weekend, the 2 sort of scrimmage stuff they did, he said he just looked great out there, leading the team downfield, making plays, making it tough on the defense. And they said it's everything. All the hype seemed, he said, all the hype seems to be justified.
Guys, I want to just pivot real quick, like backwards just a little bit. Scott Walker, he says, how many of these guys we are talking about will hit the portal this coming spring?
As far as like offensive linemen, I don't know that I could see maybe a couple. It just kind of depends. That's the concern about the injured ones and stuff like that, are the ones that you're not hearing a ton about, right? The Jake Taylors of the world, something like that. I mean, you hadn't heard.
Although Jake was in the one-on-ones.
He was. He was.
He didn't look too bad. I know he's still rehabbing. He's still getting back into shape.
Right. And I'm not saying anything bad about
it. He said that publicly. He's like, I saw an interview. He's like, hey, I'm starting spring about 75%. I'm still working on everything. But I'm out here. I'm getting work in. If you're Ozida and Howland, I guess you could jump in the portal, but why would you do that when you're injured? I think that's kind of a risky. I think that's a risk move, right?
I think a lot of it, that's where a lot of the NIL stuff comes in, though, too. You start seeing that you had to pay 2 offensive tackles that were high school kids a lot of money to get them, particularly for Susi. You got to think about that. I mean, the money is the money also tells you who you feel like at least they have an allegiance to, and who they're going to try to play as much as they can in view of the fact that they made the most money.
I believe that. In all honesty, I think that with Nagy kind of being the overarching, governor of that situation, I think it's going to be one of those things where, on one hand, I don't necessarily know if we're in a position to lose all of these offensive linemen, even the ones.
I would hope we don't.
Yeah. On one hand, on the other hand, you still got. I would say that out of every personnel group that we have, this may be the one that you could say a lot of those guys are actually Beating Bow guys, right? To the point where they want to play for Beating Bow, they want to be coached by Beating Bow, and unless they're asked to leave, I don't think that anybody is just necessarily bolting, because everybody has had a chance to, play, vie for a spot, whatever they need to do. So I think that when you get to summer, it's going to be a thing of, hey, best ability is availability, as BV always says. And I think that kind of going in, spots are going to be open. I think a lot of spots are going to be open along the offensive line, but I think that it's either put up or shut up. But like I said, I don't, and that's where I'm interested to see what Nagy does. But in Chris Mason, please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. But I just don't know if we're in a position to lose. I think.
Well, and I would just say that too. Before I didn't want it to sound like I was just saying it's a money thing, because I don't think it is. When it comes to Bill Beatonbow, he doesn't give a shit what you're making. He's gonna play the best guy.
Well, there's always been a sort of a paradox with Bill, right? We always wonder why his recruiting struggled, but the guys who play for him swear by him, right? It's like that they love playing for him. He's the guy they want. That, he has a very, that's always been the paradox there. I do think there's a chance an offensive lineman, some tight ends, running backs could be told, look, we're not renewing your contract. We want to give you that in a manner that allows you to go find another place to play and do that. But, even guys that you would have thought sort of fit that model, Gavin Sawchuk, all of a sudden we're hearing is having a really good camp, has put on weight, and he and X-Rob are really sort of the 1-2 backs right now. So it's hard to really, there's not that much. I was told there's not that much dead weight on the roster. It just isn't. Nagy said there is just not that much dead weight on the roster. There's some guys, obviously, who probably they're going to have a conversation with and just say, look, you haven't hit the field here so far. You're moving into year 3. We don't think you're going to hit the field. You're not going to hit the field in year 3. And at some point, we're just going to bring in better talent behind you. So you need to make some decisions about what you want to do, where you want to go. And I think those conversations are coming up. On the defensive side of the ball, if you're really thinking, Gentry Williams says his shoulder feels better than ever, and the coaches and the rehab staff's confident that they found and fixed the problem. Peyton Bowen's obviously coming back from his turf toe separated, muscle kind of, that whole injury. It's just, if you think about the defense, there's just not a lot of dead weight around. I mean, you could say, everything I've been hearing says Marcus Strong is working really, really hard this spring. He's doing really well. I mean, that would be the only guy, I think on that could be a player that that you could say, well, do I got to cut this guy? And he's working really hard. I mean, everyone seems to be, Taylor Heim seems to be finding his way at will linebacker and at Cheetah. I'm on the defense. I'm just not having a hard time identifying what I would call classic deadweight. Like, you're in your third or fourth year and you're never seeing the field, right? There's very few guys that I could, that you could mention that about. I mean, Taylor Wine would be a stretch, and I don't think that's the case based upon everything we're hearing about him. So offensively, I'd hate to pick on the position. Tight end might be somewhere that you decide to make a move at, right? That would make sense. Based upon spring, we're hearing that Will Huggins is doing well as an inline blocking tight end who catches the ball well, but isn't your classic two-way threat, right?
Yeah.
And then Kanik is the opposite side, right? Kanik is more of an H-back,
and he appears to be like one of the ones performing right now.
Yeah,
so.
and both those guys seem to be performing well. Carson Kent had a couple of good plays in the one-on-one.
Yeah.
That was encouraging. But, so that's the question, is that Kanik doesn't quite fit one mold, but you could use him another way. And Huggins fits the inline blocking mold, but isn't necessarily going to be the true two-way threat that, that we want. You could probably piece those two guys together and make some plays and get some plays, and and Arbuckle will figure out how to use them if nothing else happens. But there is a desire. It's been stated by almost every service that an OU goes to the portal. If they could find a two-way tight end, that would be a priority.
Here's the only question I have about that though is I don't know. Watching a lot of that film, they didn't use a ton of tight ends last year. It doesn't seem like. I think it feels like you're gonna. How much are you really going to use a big tight end or a two-way tight end or whatever? I think that they've got enough guys that they expect to be playmakers that I don't know how much you go out and spend on one. And, when it comes to that, and you have a guy, listen, maybe the young kid is still too young and not really coming around. I don't know, but maybe at some point this year you expect him to develop into something, and maybe that becomes a bigger thing later in the season. I don't know, but I just feel like we're wanting it. We're hearing everybody wanting it, talking about the tight end room, we may be talking about a room that doesn't have to play as big a role as what we would like to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think I don't think they'll do anything unless they find a guy that they absolutely love, right? Like, look, we've got pieces that can work, and we're only going to spend. I mean, it's clearly. I mean, I'm watching the OU's high school football recruiting, and prospects are just dropping off. Nagy's obviously going through film and talking to position coaches and saying, "Man, I don't like this guy, and here's why." And the coaches obviously, it's a discussion. I don't think it. And the coach is like, "Well, I do have other guys I'm looking at that I prefer." Well, who are those guys? Oh yeah, let's. I mean, some guys who I thought would be official visitors are falling off.
Oh, I got one thing I want to jump in here on with that, fellas. So when we talk about the usage of the tight end, so the past two offensive coordinators, the past three offensive coordinators, Lincoln didn't do it all the time. He did it a bunch, but not all the time. Levy did it a lot. Seth Luttrell did it a lot. How much split zone run scheme are we going to see? That, because that's the question. How many times is that tight end, H-back, whatever you want to call it? How many times is that guy going to be asked to block in Arbuckle's offense? Watching the highlights, you don't necessarily, you see more GT counter and things like that. But I mean, to me, I think that's something maybe we need to. That's a question that we maybe need to answer next week. Go watch some film on that offense and kind of try to come back. I mean, I guess come back maybe with an answer, because for me, I think that would be the kind of the key in this thing, because we all want a pass catching. everybody wants Jermaine Gresham. Everybody wants Mark Andrews. To me, hell, if we could get a Grant Calcaterra in here that can stay healthy, that's perfectly fine with me. But at the same time,
well, he's an NFL prospect. He's an NFL player. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you know.
But for me, I think that's one of the things is just kind of looking at those formations that he likes to run. Obviously, it could be a different story this year because Arbuckle is a guy that is coined as being able to figure out build an offense around the talent that he has, the personnel he has currently, right? So he may figure out something, maybe Huggins or hell Helms, right? Caden McIntyre that nobody's talking about. Maybe those guys come in there and be that dual threat type of guy. But for me, I think that's one important thing because when you talk about H-back and different things like that, I think with Kanik, from stuff I've heard, I think they want to use him. And I think they could.
Yeah.
That's a guy that you can actually throw it out in space and he can actually like on a screen or something like that. He can make something happen.
Yeah.
But as far as putting him in there to block different things like that, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be his strong suit. But when you bring a Huggins or a kid like that, is that what they're going to be asked to do as far as, you know, running like some split zone stuff or being able to just be an extra blocker in there? Because God knows we do not want another South Carolina situation where we're putting, you know, our tight end on Dylan
Stewart. No.
Yeah, that was just crazy, man.
Yeah, no, I think these are all really good points. I'm just letting you know, I'm pretty sure that OU is going to, if the right tight end shows up in the portal, OU will make a move on him. That will happen. That call it a prediction from me. You know, so Sooner in Texas is a good point. I just think something's gonna, if the right guy comes in the market, something will happen there, and it could happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, what Sooner in Texas was just saying, I don't think that Nagy is making the final decisions right now. In fact, I've heard that he isn't. He felt like they were already so far into the recruiting process by the time he got here that he's backed off and he's letting them kind of make that final decision. But the point being is I believe that I think he was basically saying when in that interview you're talking about that everything needs to be collaborative.
Yeah.
You know, that they need to be listening to each other and what they're doing. And that's how you're going to, you know, get a better roster. You know, finding some of these guys for these scouting services. And we said this a lot lately too. And this is where I think it's so big is that, you know, you basically talk about maybe the top 1,500 maybe guys those are dudes that we know about. There's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of football players throughout this country that don't. A lot of them just slip under the cracks because they're not getting identified.
Well, look at the draft, right?
Yeah,
Ashton Junkie from Dallas, from a school OU recruited, and OU and a bunch of people in the Big 12 just didn't flat out recruit him at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't tell me Ashton Junkie is that's because he's playing Boise State schedule. That's BS.
And you see this every year. I mean, you know, I keep going back to 2 years ago. Whenever I've got a friend down in San Antonio, his son is 6'3". He had a 20 catch freaking football game, and they went deep in the playoffs. He was 19 touchdowns on the season, 1,300 yards. I mean, good grief, man. And nobody was recruiting him. It's sometimes they fall through the cracks because they're not going to these camps and certain other reasons or whatever, like what we've been talking about. And when it all boils down to it, I think that by having an actual scouting department, they're going to be out there looking at guys that, okay, where are we missing guys? They're going to be going into the weeds and into these rural areas that you don't hear a lot of stuff out of these rural areas. It doesn't mean that athletes aren't being produced there. It just means you don't see them much because the recruiting services don't view it as lucrative for them to pay attention to it.
No, I mean, I think we're going to see Nagy. When I say recruits are dropping off, I just mean I think it's clear that Nagy and the staff are meeting. Nagy's like, look, I looked at your film at X position. These are two guys I got questions about. Let's talk about them. And then, you know, the position coach might be like, Well, yeah, I kind of see what you're talking about now. I have 3 other guys that I like better than him. So I'm just going to drop him. You're right. I should drop him, right? That when because most of the guys are recruiting wide receiver, whether it's wide receiver, offensive line, D line. Like OU seems to have dropped like a defensive line, seems to have dropped their level of interest at a defensive end they were recruiting, right? Now, is that because the kid isn't reciprocating interest? Is that because Nagy has looked at the film and talked to Bates and Chavis and said, I like other kids better. Where are we with this kid? And they could be like, well, he's not being as receptive as we would have liked. And OU just decides, well, let's just go ahead and, there's a lot that factors into this parcel, right? Nagy could be stack ranking his guys, and then we'll use Bill as an example, and Bill could be stack ranking them, and then Brent could be like, when I talk to these guys, these sound the most receptive to our pitch. Yeah. And those 3 scores could equal someone falling off our radar.
Sure, why not?
I mean, and that's what I think we're going to get to.
It happens all the time like that anyways.
It does, but it's now Nagy.
Priorities.
But it's now Nagy's also is another data value, another data input, right?
And if you're not using his expertise to the utmost, then you're probably not. There's something wrong with you as a coach. There's something stupid if you're that crazy about your own evaluations. And this is a guy that's been evaluating the best talent in America for a while. Come on.
Yeah, so exactly. So it's just all of a sudden we've gone from 2 data inputs, let's just say, to 3, and the value of that is massive. Especially when you weight the relative expertise of that new data input. It's not like not like Brent Venables just called me up and said, who are the 5 offensive linemen we should be recruiting.
Exactly.
It's the guy who used to run the Senior Bowl, who is a 25-year NFL scout. It has a slightly different
connections all over the country too. That are finding guys that you may not know.
Yes, it's a little bit of a. I mean, it's completely. There's a little bit of weight difference to it, but that's what I think is basically been happening. Is that as Nagy is basically just consulting with these guys, giving opinions, and OU's constantly stack ranking these recruits, and that's what's happening.
I agree. That probably rolls you into your conversation there, Kchris, doesn't it? It's kind of there.
Hold on, I just want to get to this comment right here. He says, friend of the show, he says, you need a tight end that can create matchup problems, of course. Just needs to be a decent blocker. I would prefer more of a wide receiver type, push pressure on the linebackers. Would love to see us get that kind of guy in the portal. And, yeah. Conversations I had again with he said something that made me laugh out loud. I was in the gym and he said, if we had Barry Sharp right now, he said, even though everybody didn't like Barry Sharp, he said, I thought he was good when he was going forward. Everything when he was able just to be in obvious pass situations, he was really good. He said we would feel somewhat better about the tight end room just because. And he said we'd probably be a little bit ahead of where we want to be at with him. But it's just one of those things where you go down the list and you're saying Aiden Helms injury, does he have the explosion? Is he gonna be able to get back to that form? Caden McIntyre, I always thought the kid had talent, but is he?
I thought he was a better linebacker at a high school, but that was just my own opinion.
Yeah,
better edge rusher. He was an edge rusher. That's really where he should have played.
Yeah. Then, Mitchell, you just ask yourself, is he ever going to really get it together and be the guy that we all, think that he can be? So it's some questions there. I mean, everybody would love to have a Mark Andrews, Jermaine Gresham, Kyle Pitt, type of type. Yeah, but
there's only so many of those dudes out there is the thing. It'd be cool if you could go and get one of those dudes every year, but they're just not always there.
Yeah. Chris Mason, anything to bring up in recruiting real quick?
No, not really. I mean, the only thing is that it looks like Mason James Azure Miles and Ryan Gilbert might be making decisions in the next 30 days. And that all looks like 3 guys that will end up at OU, as most people have projected. That's what I would say. And Jaden O'Neal is in FSU and Auburn in the next couple of days, but he will be back in Norman next weekend. That's what we're hearing. So that thing is probably close to coming to a head, if you ask me.
And the plot thickens. Bo Bentley, OU.
3, LSU and Georgia.
Yeah.
3 official visits and an official visit weekend in June, all by himself.
So you got Jaden O'Neal, Bo Bentley. That's still a topic of discussion, people. So we will get to that. So with that being said, to kind of close this show out, people, last week I said that I had an idea of how we fix the NIL problem. And I'm here to tell you now, I think I got a good idea. I think I took a good whack at it. But this is going to be something that we talk about over the span of the next couple of weeks. This is more of a collaborative effort than it is anything. I took a whack at it myself, and I think that Chris Mason and Jason, we talked about this, via text over the and in the green room. Chris Mason has described it as, what do you say? Interesting. Very interesting.
Well, I think my first comment was there's a lot of common sense to this, which is problematic in the world we're currently in.
Exactly. So, Jason, wherever you're at, come back and we're gonna get to this. No further ado. Again, people, there are plenty of holes in this. There's gonna be questions. If you think that you have a solution or you think you can add to this, put something in the comments. Leave us comments, not just the live. Think about it. Go back, watch the video, watch this part, and leave a comment. Let's figure this out together, people. But anyways, no further ado. Here we go, people. Right? I'm going to read this off my iPad so I can talk about it. First things first. You heard Kirby Smart talk about it in a recent press conference. As most of you know, I'm a lawyer. I used to do family law. Now I'm more of a transactional lawyer for the state. And we always talk about the competitive bidding process. Piggybacking off of what Kirby Smart said, we got to make it more competitive, right? We got to figure out a way to make the bidding war more competitive for all schools, because Ohio State any given year can have 20 million just as OU and a lot of the top schools. However, schools are still struggling to get to the 20 million. Everybody's, Texas Tech is going to have billionaire donors, and everybody's going to have maybe that billionaire donor, but still there's a lot of stuff outside, and we won't get into any political stuff or any of that stuff of unknown reasons why things can still be made difficult. But we'll start with the high school system right now. And so this is just kind of my thoughts, right? As far as the ranking system, whether it's 247, On3, Rivals, ESPN, guys, there needs to be a mix of about 50 college to NFL scouts, current or former, however you want to do that. 2 out of the 4 premier ranking sites should combine, even if temporary, to establish official composite rankings. Think ESPN 247, or you can have 247 and On3 or Rivals, right? I know a lot of us grew up on Rivals and just looking at ESPN, but these other sites have come into the fray. So ESPN has all the money. I'm sure that they want to get their ranking system off the ground, right? Because nobody really looks at it. But, basically giving you guys an example, ESPN and 247 combined to create official composite rankings for the top 350 high school players in each respective class. Every player will be ranked, starred per usual, and valued according to their star rating, with 5-star players being valued at $250,000. Keep that number in mind. Schools are allowed to pay players direct payments higher than their star rating, but this only goes for kids that are ranked as a 4-star or lower, right? As far as your cap, there needs to be a cap on the amount an incoming freshman can make in direct NIL payments. Obviously, direct NIL payments, that means being paid directly by the school. My cap number would be.
I was going to say, because you can't cap the NIL at all. They can't. I mean, they've said that in the courts already, right?
Look, I get that. This is just a perfect system. Let me get it all through.
No, go ahead. I was just making sure I understood
This
what
is
you're
just
saying.
kind of in a perfect world. Obviously, I don't think anybody wants any caps on any money that these kids can make. However, one thing that I think that could potentially happen with this or whatever, because roster limits and all the rest of those different things, those are factors that could force you to go to a system like this, because when you look at the reduction of scholarships or however they're going to do it with the walk-ons and all the rest of that, there's still forces that may force you to kind of go towards this. But keeping in line with what we're saying, basically excluding the direct payment mentioned above, boosters, collectives, etc., may not directly or indirectly endorse or contribute to outside funding of the athlete until after the regular season. Keep in mind, schools have flexibility in how they can allocate their revenue sharing and all the rest of that stuff. We'll get to that here in a second. As far as incoming freshman athletes, they won't be allowed to earn any outside NIL payments until after the fourth game of the year. I say fourth game simply because that's what the red shirt rule is. So we'll let it see. Is the kid going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to get time? Is he going to get some time? What's going to kind of happen with that situation? It gives teams, boosters, not boosters, but teams, vendors, payors, however you want to call it, and the freshmen to kind of figure out how that situation is going to go. Schools should be encouraged to partner with different payors, dealerships, franchisees, whatever the case may be. However, the players shall not be the payor shall not be directly influenced by these boosters and schools. Now, that is common sense that Kchris Mason is talking about. And that's one of those things where I put on here, just in my lawyer mind, this process shall be subject to audits with or without advance notice. Essentially, athletes will sign agreements to give notice to the schools, to the school or the governing body or whatever the case may be of that. But easier said than done. We all know before NIL was a thing, there was NIL and it was under the table and people were making it happen. So as far as the high school, I think we could take a break there and just get your thoughts. Kchris Mason, Jason, whichever one of you guys want to jump in first.
Well, Chris, just one last question, one quick question, clarifying question. So you're capping, let's just say you can cap 5-star high school kids at $250K. Okay. All right. Let's just say that you can do that. Is there a
Feels like a low number, man?
Well, yeah, I'm with you. But let's just pretend that you can cap that. Is there an overall high school cap?
For me, if there was
or is that part of the 20 mil?
I think that's part that to me that would be my cap that I would put as far as just what. Well, I mean that's a good question because the revenue sharing with the 20 million or whatever. Because I think when we came in here,
so I'm fine. I'm fine with. I like the idea. I like the idea of potentially. And I mentioned this offline of 50 anonymous college NFL scouts give players true rankings, right? Like NFL draft grades, and then the school says this is the number, this is the ranking we got from you from 50 anonymous scouts, true scouts, people who really know what they're doing, looked at your film and says your potential to be an NFL first round pick is with 10 being. There's no guarantee. There's no doubts about it. It's like let's call it the Adrian Peterson ranking, or the Adrian Peterson ranking. And let's just say, 1 is like the Baker Mayfield ranking out of high school, right? So let's just say that, right? So if you could do that, and then the school could say, based upon this, we're slotting you into this cap. We're slotting you into this money for our freshman class, and all the SEC schools sign on the same methodology, right? The Big Ten and the SEC sign the same methodology. That would be a way I think you would get to a more realistic system. I think it works more for football than it does basketball because then you have shoe contracts, which make things a lot more interesting.
True.
But I think if you could get like a true player evaluation from 50 anonymous bodies who just go into a system and say, yeah, I looked at this film, it's a out of 10, give them 4, give them a rubric that makes sense for the position, give them a rubric that makes sense so they could quickly do this. And you do this for, the top 350 players in this, and then and be outside the top 350 just gets a flat number. And schools could go over that number if they've evaluated the kid differently. But I think you got to set some kind of cap for the incoming freshman class. That's just the way you have a cap. We need to move everything towards like a CBA process, right? And just like a rookie going in the NBA, the teams have cap numbers they can spend, and in the NFL they've got rookie cap numbers they can spend. That's where I would say that you need to come up with maybe a number for the team. And if this way you want competitive balance, if kids are willing to accept less to go to schools like Alabama and Ohio State to win championships, that's fine. But they will probably have some bigger money offers from schools like, for an example, what we just saw, OU.
If what you really want is this competitive balance bullshit, like what we heard from Kirby yesterday, then sure. But
right,
that's not what they want.
That's not what they want. Exactly. That's why I'm saying Chris has too much common sense in here. It's like everybody wants control, but no one wants those controls on them. Right? We all need. I mean, the coaches are. We don't need a system, and then the coach is like, "But I don't want to be governed by a system." It's like, but everybody else needs to be governed by a system.
Yes,
it's like well, we need a cap for freshman money. I completely agree with that. But I'm not going to follow that. But you all should. It's sort of like this. It's this hypocritical argument.
The NIL side of it, I don't think that you can really do anything about that. You can do whatever you could do with the rev share. You can have your cap at whatever.
So I would say this is the rest. And I think
a pipe dream. It's not.
The thing
but
is,
I think there's a NIL. If a kid can truly market themselves to places and justify it against whatever clearinghouse, fine. But we all know that's not what's going on today.
Yeah.
So this is the high school signing bonus. That's what I'd almost call this. This is your high school signing bonus. And guess what? Every team has a salary cap, and every team's going to have to draft who they want and spend their money where they feel like they should spend it. And we're going to give the first 350 kids are all going to be graded up, and that's going to be our ranking system.
Mason, so I just want to jump in there, Jason, and that to me, I think that's where we could go as a signing bonus, because think of it like this right here in this logic. You have your direct funding, which would just be from the school, signing bonus. Your outside funding is all the endorsement deals.
The true NIL deals as a high school superstar that you are able to validate and prove. Not some, you're now Lubbock Drilling and Oil is giving you $500,000 to appear in an ad in Lubbock, the Lubbock Daily Journal or whatever that freaking newspaper's called. Yeah. That's bullshit, right? We know that. That's the stuff you want to stop. But I think you're onto something. But I would call it in high school. I would literally call it what it is. It is the recruiting signing bonus. That's what you should call this first part, is the recruiting high school signing bonus. And maybe it comes from the revenue share and it has a cap on it. And if let's say I'm talking about, and in basketball, obviously it's different. Like somebody like Cooper Flagg probably could have generated true NIL deals, right? I mean, like Nike could say, well, we're building you a shoe. Like, let's just say Aaliyah Chavez, right? Who just verbal to OU, the number one women's basketball player. She probably has a Jordan brand shoe that's going to pay her $300,000 before she gets on campus. That deal's legit, right? That's a legitimate deal. That's a shoe company identifying a hot shot product, no different than anything else, right? It's no different. That's the kind of deal that you say, yeah, sure, that makes sense.
But in order to do that, then you got to get rid of these collectives if you're going to do that.
No, you do, exactly. So you've got to, and so what you got to do is then, and obviously, like Stanley Stutzman's making true NIL money doing advertising for OU while on campus, right? He's making real money, right? If Aaliyah Chavez comes to OU and leads them to a Final Four or a title game, she's going to make real money advertising for OU, right? So that stuff is all good. What we need to get rid of is the people with too much money in their hands just throwing cash around for guys that aren't really that's where we need to drive that through. Okay, well, if you want to do that,
how many rich people do you think are going to continue throwing good money after bad?
I don't know. The Texas Tech guys don't seem to be stopping, do they?
They just started, though. They just got started.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But I think
at some point you're like, this isn't really working out that much.
I'm with you, but
when you talk about Oklahoma, Governor Stitt just signed into law that the money that you give to the collective for NIL is now it's a tax write-off for you.
I was just gonna say that's a great segue. Let's get to the revenue sharing, because I think that's something that people definitely need to kind of know about. So just switching gears here, people. So watching some other pods and people talk about it, saw Ohio State. There's an Ohio pod out there. Shout out to those guys. I'll get the name for you guys next week, or I'll put it in the comments. But, they talked about as far as this revenue sharing. So essentially what's happening, and I pulled these directly from like the NIL, from the NCAA site, as far as what are the projected numbers for OU in 2025 as far as the revenue share. So you see the annual revenue share, you see 22% of that, and you see the estimated sharing number, right? 20.5 mil, right? So you basically getting 20.5 mil in as far as revenue sharing that you're going to be able to share with
your athletic department, correct? It's across the athletic department, though. It's not all football.
So that's the interesting part about it that people need to definitely know, is that, so to break it down, what happens is that you take this 20.5 million. This is what every team in the SEC outside of Mississippi setting. Mississippi is getting like 19 point something or whatever. Regardless, OU gets that 20.5 mil, right? Title IX comes into play because you have to pay all players, all teams and all players, women and men's sports equally. So the thing is, and the question and the argument that people are revolving all around is simply, what are our cash sports, right? A lot of people are saying, okay, well, football and men's basketball are the big players here, so they should get most of the money. And then you're like, well, here at OU, softball is winning all the national championships. Baseball is making, Final Fours. Women's basketball is better than men's basketball. Men's basketball is still a cash sport, I guess. The only two sports here at OU that they charge for you to attend a game is men's basketball and obviously football. But there's 21 sports. You kind of see the numbers there in the middle, but if you just kind of go down just a tad bit, you'll see exactly kind of what the NCAA is projecting will happen with this 20.5 mil as far as the revenue share for football, revenue share for men's basketball, and in all other sports. And you'll see the average base pay is what we'll call it right now that a player could make on a football team. However, you definitely have to note, which I think this is good, these are averages per athlete. In actuality, a few players per team will receive substantially higher than the average, while many will get much less. For players who see little, if any, playing time, their revenue share will also likely be little or none, right? So those are things that you got to think of, because that's going to be kind of base pay money that you have right there. However, kind of my thoughts about this right here, just to kind of sum it all up real quick. Go to an NFL grade model for upperclassmen and graduate players who enter the transfer portal, or, transfer, non-transfer, whichever one you want to call them. I would say you take the top 250 players. They will be graded and valued accordingly, with those receiving high grades. You will have an A through an S tier being valued at about $750,000. As I guess you, Chris Mason, would you call this another signing bonus?
Well, it's your transfer bonus. So if you're, obviously, I'm originally from England, so a little more familiar with soccer than perhaps the two of you guys are.
Yeah.
So soccer, for the longest time, when players transferred from like, you go from Man United to Real Madrid, Well, Real Madrid Man United would get money from Real for the player. The player didn't see any of that. They would just basically have their contract transferred from one team to another team. It'd basically be like, it would be like the Lakers saying, "Oh, we want this guy," and basically, and let's just say the player's on a really shitty team. We want Wembanyama from the Spurs, and they buy Wembanyama from the Spurs for like $200 million. So it used to be that way it would occur. So the way I see it is, because it was funny, I saw one of the coaches was saying that whenever they lose a portal player, the other school should pay them. That we've developed the kid, we've spent the time and effort. You should be paying us so that we can get a replacement player. So I think it should be. It's a portal bonus. It's a portal bonus. Yeah, you're changing locations just like out of high school, and the school is going to pay you a bonus to come play.
Jason?
I was actually just looking at something because I was watching what these guys were saying in the thing. I don't see where Texas Tech is a top 5 in recruiting. I know what we're talking about. That there's
portal wise they are.
Portal wise, okay.
Yeah.
But overall, they're recruiting, and it all goes together. They're in like the back end of the freaking 20s and 30s. So it's not like I'm not too concerned about that. As far as it goes with this stuff on the revenue share, I mean, I want to look through this a little bit more. I'm trying to look at this in terms of reality wise, what we're doing. And I don't know that
these are actual projections though.
Right.
These are actual projections.
But the revenue share has nothing to do with NIL. And that's all I know. And I know that Joe P was talking about being able to limit what you can make NIL wise, and they can't. Mm-hmm. The reason I know that they can't is because every court that it's gone in front of so far has ruled in favor of the athlete and that's making NIL in every step.
Right.
Along the way here so far.
But Jason, I think if you're going to in order to impose what Chris is talking about, you've got to have like a CBA behind it.
Okay. When you do this, well, that's when it comes into play. But NIL will even NIL in the NFL which it's endorsements is what we're talking about.
Yes.
You have to actually have it to where you don't have collectives if that's what you want to do.
Right, but we've never.
It'll be about selling yourself as a endorser that gets you paid like that. As long as there's collectives, and even if there isn't collectives, you're going to find ways to funnel money to these kids, whether or not you have a CBA.
But I find it interesting, Jason, to your point, though, the billionaires that own NFL football teams, right? And the majority of them are billionaires with stupid money to spend, right?
Stupid money, yeah.
Right. None of them have found a way to really circumvent the salary cap by funneling fake NIL, fake advertising deals to players to keep on your team. That's because
it's a whole different animal when it comes to, they actually want competitive balance in the NFL. They don't want it here.
Okay, all right. Well, you're right, but don't you think it's funny that somehow I'm going to use Jerry Jones just as an example, has never gotten busted for somehow funneling extra salary cap money to Cowboy players by creating fake endorsement deals?
How do we know that they're not? I mean,
well, they've never gotten caught. No one's ever gotten caught doing this, right?
Okay, hold on though. What I'm saying is Jerry Jones also has other businesses where he could use this person as an endorser. You know what I mean? You can
right, but the framework I'm talking about, right? Like, let's just say you go to Makai Parsons and say, "I'm going to sign you to this deal, but I'm also going to arrange 10 million more in endorsements through companies I have arrangements with, and we're going to basically pump up your advertising deals."
I think it's because I get what you're talking about. What I'm telling you, I think the biggest difference is that they love it that they can do a salary cap at all because, and not only that, the only thing that they really have to pay you is what's in your signing bonus. The rest of that money is never protected. Never.
Yeah, right. But I'm just saying that we've never seen either. The Minnesota Timberwolves did some weird deals with trying to get guys to sign for less and promising them money on the table.
Correct.
But we've never seen a pro franchise in American sports circumvent.
They're making so much more money, though. And
well, right, but seriously, but you've never seen like a situation where, hey, we're going to sign you for this, but under the table, we're going to send you more money so you'll stay.
What does that mean, though? What does that mean to you, though? Is in comparison to the college game, what is that? What does that mean?
To me, that's the exact. That's what the collectives are basically doing, right? Hey, we're gonna do pay for play and pay for signing with us, and we're gonna give
the NFL does though either. And right. There's a lot more teams. Even if we just talk about, let's say you go to a Power 2, Power 3 concept, and it's 70 teams. That's still double what you have, more what you have in the NFL. We're talking 32 teams.
Right. I'm just saying that the
a lot more pie to cut up.
That NIL is basically bootleg compensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. Is that in the current American pro sports system, no teams have ever been cited for bootleg compensation.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, yeah. So what?
Well,
what does that mean?
Well, I'm saying that why is that? Is because they have a CBA, they have salary caps, they have structures, they have a league commissioner, right? They have somebody above.
Maybe they just don't care. I mean, what can you do about it?
Well,
I think that you also have one owner of a team instead of a bunch of in college. You've got a bunch of boosters out there,
right?
It's not the same shit.
It is, and you're correct. It's apples and oranges. I'm just saying that somewhere Kchris has put in, there is if we keep hacking at it, there are, if you have a CBA and basically you want to play college football,
have to do that. Yeah.
If you want to play college football, you're signing an agreement here, and in this agreement there are limits. You could not sign it and go play football somewhere else. We're not the only game in town. You could go in the XFL, UFL, try whatever you want. But if you want to come wear our brand, these are the rules.
But that also forces the schools to go by the rules.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
And here's
you have to have.
Fair is a place where they freaking judge pigs. They do not want fairness in college football.
No, you're right.
And in all actuality, what you just said is exactly where I would love to get it to. I just want to make it to where it's as competitive as it possibly can be, because we've seen the Texas A&Ms, we've seen
Ole Miss.
To me, who would benefit the most would be Oregon out of this whole situation if this was a system that we're going to, because Oregon doesn't have to necessarily go outside like everybody else to find all these boosters and everything. We could talk about Texas. We talked about Texas early this year. As rich as they are, it seemed like they were having some issues as far as like kids want more money, this and that. Boosters want to get behind it, this and that.
But they're not getting tax write-offs for that NIL too.
Yeah. But with Oregon,
and
Phil Knight can just write a check that matches whatever the revenue sharing is going to be.
Well, I mean, Georgia, one of the reasons Kirby's talking about this, and this is not very well, advertised, Georgia's not one of these super rich programs.
Yeah.
They're an agricultural land grant university.
Sure.
They do not have, they're a massive university, and their purpose is pushing the economy of Georgia by creating college grads, that work in Georgia. And they've done a great job of that. Same with Georgia Tech and Georgia State in the state of Georgia. All three of them have huge, when they started using lottery money for academics and for enrollment and tuition, it blew up those universities. But their universities are land grant universities whose purpose are producing college graduates. They don't have the massive money of a place like, of some of these other schools. So that's why Kirby's saying this. Alabama's in a little bit in the same boat, right? Now that Saban's gone, they've lost all of their discounts in getting players, right?
Yeah, they were losing. They were losing him while he was there. That's why he ain't there anymore.
Yeah, so it's all very interesting. But Chris, I'm going to send you some thoughts and an edit on this for us to hack at next week, depending what else we got to talk about.
Please do, Jason. Do this,
and I want to talk about it more too. I right now where I'm at on it, I think until we start even hearing them going down the path of collective bargaining, and basically you're going to become a employee of your program. I don't know how this all works itself out, because I don't believe that you don't have a centralized structure like you do in the NFL. You don't.
No, we and this is where you need an ombudsman over these processes, right? And college has nobody, and that's why it's pure chaos.
They want it. You want to have your cake and eat it too. We don't even talk about the fact that they're actually it's not just a portal for the kids and it's screwing our team over because of the portal. Well, guess what? The coaches are using that portal too. Get out, go get in it.
No, I mean, that should be the same. There should be the same thing for coaches, right? The coaches should have a window where they can change jobs.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's that. If you lose your guy because I can't believe what the Stanford guy was doing, and his defense was, "I'm just that big an asshole. I'm an asshole to everybody." Apparently, if you're Stanford and you have to fire your guy because he's committing HR violations and as he breathes, guess what? You get to promote an interim guy or hire some guy outside of the college, and that's what they did. They promoted. I think I found Frank Reich. I don't know what he was doing, playing pickleball somewhere in Buffalo, New York or something. That's where we should head on. The coaches should have some restrictions around what they're doing too. Completely.
And Jason, like I told you, and I told Chris Mason, this is a collaborative thing. So I know there's some holes in that, and I want there to be holes because the whole thing is that's my style. I want to make it as collaborative as possible because everybody has pieces to the pie. My goal would be that we figure something out that we are all three solid on, and maybe 3+ with some of the people that we definitely trust and love to see in the comments. And we say, hey, this is going to be our open letter to the NCAA as far as, hey, do you want to take control of this and put belt to ass on this? Or do you want to sit here and let the SEC and Big Ten basically become a super league, a super conference?
And I think that's what's in what direction are we really heading in? That's the other thing, is that it is becoming that. And I've told you guys that I think that that's a bad thing. I think that if you cut out 3/4 of the schools from the college football playoff, the college football playoff is no longer a golden goose.
Yeah.
Well, I've always viewed it that there should be a Premier League of college football and a Division I of college football, and each one has its own playoffs. You can't tell me people. Look, if you tell them, I would definitely watch I'd watch. Let's just say take a team.
I think we would too, but if there's a huge difference in money right now, and that's what they're. That's
well, there's always going to be. There's going to be a huge difference. They haven't
even moved into the direction of being able to do that. And again, we're talking about ownership of those clubs in Europe too.
Yeah, so there's
actual ownership, not a bunch of.
But I think it would work. I think it would work because I think you would redefine the money, and they'd they'd be more competitive. They would start the season knowing they could be in the playoffs and win a title. And for 60 teams in college football, more like 70 teams in college football, that's a complete myth, right?
Yeah.
So
you just play. But no, listen, yes, this is going to be something, as I mentioned early on in the show, in the intro, we'll be discussing this over the next couple of weeks. Maybe not this long, because this is going to be a continuation piece. So definitely go back, watch this. And like I said, if you truly have any ideas or whatever, hit us up. We're not hard to find. Comment, do all those different things. We'll send you our info or whatever, emails or whatever. Just hit us up. Jason is on a lot. You guys have access to all three of us as far as our channels are concerned. So definitely hit us up. We're on Twitter as well. So get in the DMs, whatever the case may be, hit us up. Because like I said, this is a think tank. I think that this is a good foundation, or at least a great icebreaker at the very least, to be able to begin the conversation of like, hey, this is where we could land. I think looking at that in hindsight, listening to you guys, listening to some of the comments, I think the high school model that I kind of planned out a little bit, I think that is probably more realistic. It's still unrealistic, Jason, but I think it's more realistic. I think it's more approachable as far as the conversation, because the college
I think that
is out of whack.
I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be parameters and all this. That's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, I don't think we're that close to that, though.
No,
I don't think we're very close to it.
We're ages away, but
right.
Hell, why are we letting everybody else make the decision for us? We could dictate to them, and that's kind of always been my approach. Real
quick, let me just answer what Billy on just said. That he's talking. Say Georgia doesn't have big time cash would be incorrect. If Notre Dame or Michigan were to wake up with Georgia's money tomorrow, the presidents of those universities would jump out of a building. That's not the fucking same. I'm just saying.
I live in Atlanta. Trust me, it is not the revenue that
Georgia Tech has more money than Georgia, do they not?
Well, some guy last week just created the everlasting battery. So at Georgia Tech, so yeah, I mean that guy's worth $5 trillion. So, but you know what? He doesn't give a dime to their football program.
He may die soon for doing something like that.
Well, yeah, exactly. So a car that runs on water just runs on water. All you need is water. Kill that guy.
Kill that guy.
Texaco and Exxon took him out last week.
Yes, they did.
Or actually, he sold the tech to Exxon and Texaco, and he never has to work again or do anything. Right? Hey, you keep this off.
They stuck it on the shelf.
All right, people. We've been on here for an hour and 26 minutes. Thank you guys for staying in here with us with this whole NIL talk. Again, just thought it would be something interesting, something different that you only get to hear on this podcast with all three of us. Kchris Griffin, that's me, Horns Down Podcast. Jason with the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with the coach. Shout out to the coach. Then Chris Mason, Mr. Sooners 360 himself. Obviously, you guys see all the shows Jason does, all the content that he's pushing out every week. Chris Mason has the Patreon, all those different things. Go down to the bio. You'll definitely see that stuff. Past videos. Check out all our content. Like, subscribe, do all those different things. Share. With that being said, guys, we out of here. Peace.